Welcome to the Build Better Blueprint, the podcast where we discuss the foundations of real estate, entrepreneurship, and personal growth. Join Christian Cardamone as he shares insights, strategies, and stories that will empower you to level up your business, your lifestyle, and your impact. Let's build a better blueprint for success, starting now.
Thanks for tuning in. This is Christian Cardamone, and this is the Build Better Blueprint. Today I've got a real treat for you, Mr. Jason Velie. Jason's a real estate stud here in Wilmington, North Carolina, and I'm excited to introduce him to you guys. Jason was working in a career in finance, and he began investing in real estate back in October of 2019 with virtually no money to his name. Now he's left his six-figure W-2 only 3.5 years later, and Jason's portfolio consists of over 100 rental units, and he has a house flipping business where he flips around 50 houses per year. Jason's business model from the beginning has been flipping single-family homes, including the much overlooked asset class of manufactured homes. With holdings in commercial, multifamily properties, Jason is also a husband, father of 5, and a church drummer in Wilmington, North Carolina. So, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jason Velie, how are you, Jason?
Thanks, man. Doing great. Thanks for having me.
I'm
How are
doing
you?
good, man. Just working through some technical difficulties here, but and I appreciate your patience bearing with me while I get this thing up and running. So it's Friday. We're both having some challenges today. You just were texting someone about a real estate issue, the joys of being a landlord, and I'm learning how to operate podcast software. So the weekend is looking pretty good. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of like your origin story? I know you have I wouldn't say rags to riches, but you started in kind of a traditional path of working in W-2 and then have since become, basically a millionaire and have a very successful real estate portfolio and house flipping company. I want you to tell the folks a little bit about yourself and how all that started.
Yeah, no, thank you. So I went to school for finance and I knew that I had interest in the way that money works and investing. And I ended up right out of college. I got my bachelor's in finance from UNCW and then immediately went to work for a large investment firm as a financial advisor where I got my Series 7 and 66. So I was able to sell securities and whatnot. And I thought that I would love that job for the investment side of it and being able to help educate people of their finances, because there's so much noise out there. If you're not in this space, you don't really know what the different types of accounts are, the different investments that are available, or what's appropriate for you. So I really like being able to help just dumb that down to a kindergarten level for people to help them understand it. But I learned very, very quickly that that's not the role that I signed up for, that the role I signed up for was 100% a sales job and nothing more than that. And it was just push, 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 sell, sell, sell. And so I decided after 8 months of working there to begin working with institutional trust funds, specifically in the funeral and cemetery industry, also known as the death care industry to some folks. And it was super niche. Became a trust officer doing that for a while, had a super flexible job with great bosses that really, once I streamlined some things, it really afforded me the time to start doing some real estate stuff on the side. And I really thought I would work a W all the way up through retirement. And I thought that I would save up a little bit of money and buy one rental and then save up more money and buy another rental slowly. And kind of just the slow, boring way of real estate investing, if you will. My thought was, well, hey, if I can do that and the mortgages pay themselves off, maybe by the time I retire, I'll have 20 or 30 rentals that are paid off, and that'll be a whole lot of money coming in retirement. And that is absolutely true. You can do that. Thousands of people, if not millions, have done it. But it was at some point a friend at one of my friend's weddings that I'd never met before. He was a house flipper, and I was telling him that I was in the process of buying my first rental. And he introduced me to the Bigger Pockets podcast. And from there, I started listening to it, and I just became addicted to the information and just consumed. And that's what really where I learned what hard money and private money was. And something just clicked in my head. I was just like, wait, you mean to tell me that if I can just find a good enough deal, there are people out there that'll loan me 100% of the money that I need for the purchase and the rehab? I understand it because you're getting a great deal, so they still have a low LTV, so their loan is still pretty safe, but that was just not something that I had ever been introduced to before. And so from there, I went out and found my first deal and used hard money to take it down. And I leveraged a credit card to get the $8,000 that I needed to bring to get it closed up front and to buy the materials for the handyman. And I got that flip sold, made about $26,000 profit on it. And that was about proof of concept for me. But I'll tell you, it wasn't just straight up from there. You know, it took me a good 8 months or so before I found my next deal. And after I flipped that one, even though we made money on it, it was so stressful and such a headache. It's kind of ironic because I told my wife after that one that I didn't think I was going to flip houses anymore. And here I am today. And then I'd say deal 3 took another 6 months or so to find. And then once I started getting around deal 5 or 6 or so, some things really started to click. I started to figure out what types of marketing were working for me. I started to gain more credibility from local wholesalers that would bring me deals. I started getting more credibility with private money and hard money lenders. And so things just kind of snowballed from there. So there was virtually no growth for the first 2 years of my investing career. But then the next year and a half is when I started flipping a lot more, and I scaled up to 60 apartment doors, which was the point at which I quit the W2, which was, as you mentioned in the bio, 3.5 years from when I first started.
Yeah, dude, that's amazing. That's such, it probably felt like an eternity, but when you look at it like just reading a bio, it's actually a really quick timeline. And so to go from knowing virtually nothing about real estate, self-educating through the Bigger Pockets platform, learning about this, applying it, and then becoming, at this point, it's safe to say that you've been tremendously successful in it. What was like a breakthrough when you had that realization, like, dude, holy shit, like I can do this, I'm good at it, and the market's rewarding me, and there's probably a path towards leaving my job? What was that day like? And or was it like something that happened gradually, or was it like an oh shit moment?
It was definitely gradual. It's kind of funny because I would be talking to one of my coworkers who was interested in what I was doing, but never took initiative to do it on his own. And I thought after doing the first deal or two, I remember thinking, I bet if I do a little bit of this on the side, I could probably be a millionaire by the time I'm like 45. And then I remember after doing another couple deals, having the thought of, okay, no, I think like definitely 40 for sure, no problem. And then I do a few more deals and I'm like, wait, this is going to happen like within the next year.
Yeah,
And
dude, you like cranked it down
and sure
in
enough,
5-year increments, and then you're there.
pretty much. And so I ended up first becoming a net worth millionaire. I think I was 20. Yeah, I was 29. So before I was 30, I was net worth millionaire. And that was surprising to me because of how quickly it came, but also how broke I still was, even as a millionaire, because, everybody in real estate is, wealthy from equity, but equity doesn't pay the bills. Equity doesn't put money in your bank account. So trying to manage liquidity is, always the plight of a real estate investor that's trying to scale and also trying to buy more stuff for tax reasons, but you also need to keep some of that liquidity for safety, and it's always a tough balance, if you will. But yeah, I would say in regards to when specifically to leave the day job, because I even back then already had 4 kids, I now have 5, but even back then I had 4 kids. I knew that, and my wife wasn't working. Each kid that we had, she started working less and less until she eventually retired completely. And I just knew that I'm the only income right now, and my day job was paying the bills. It wasn't enough to do anything other than pay the bills. We weren't saving any money from the day job income, but it paid the bills. And so my only concern was, before I leave the day job, since I don't know what the housing market is going to do, I want to make sure that before I leave the day job, I have enough net passive rental income coming in from my rental portfolio to be able to cover all of our living expenses, so that if the market collapsed all of a sudden and I found myself not being able to flip houses for a year or 2 years or longer, we would still have our bills paid without either of us necessarily having to go back to our W-2. So that was really kind of the strategy, what the wife and I both felt comfortable with. And so once we got up to about 60 rental doors, which, to full disclaimer, by weighted ownership, I only owned about 45 of those 60 at that time. I've since bought out that partner of those other, or no, not entirely. I bought I think 7 of those units back since then. But anyway, so that number was what was needed based off of how much cash flow they were producing at the time. And so once we got to that point, that's when we decided, let's go ahead and pick a date, that we're gonna call it quits. And because I had so much respect for my employer and my bosses and coworkers at that time, we basically gave them like a 6-month notice. So they had plenty of time to make whatever changes they needed to do, push off my responsibilities onto others while I was still there to help train them and facilitate the handoffs and stuff. And so then I quit my W-2 April 21st of 2023, which is not quite 2 years ago, and that was the day before I turned 30, because I kind of like the idea of being able to say that I retired before 30.
Dude.
It just seemed kind of neat.
Net worth millionaire and retired by 30, fully in the game, working for yourself as an entrepreneur it's a good place to be. So hats off to you, man.
Absolutely.
I think it's interesting too, and I like that you had some strategy behind your timing for everything, and also finding a way to kind of insulate yourself against a bad market. So you didn't have to necessarily perform, or if you did and performance was low, by having these rentals and this passive income. I say passive, we all know it's not passive, but this other income coming in through rentals allows you guys to at least maintain a quality of life and day to day keep the roof over your head, because it's an important point to make. A lot of folks hear and see real estate investors and they talk about how many units they have, how many doors they have, and how rich they are. If you were to look under the hood, a lot of these folks have minute shares of interest in all these things. They're equity rich but cash poor. So to balance that is really responsible, especially, dude, 5 kids, man. The stakes are high. So I think that's really cool that you were strategic about it. You weren't reckless about it, because so many people at that age too, when you get into it and you start hitting home runs, it's real easy to be like, well, this is going to just last forever. It's great to see that you put that much thought into it, because that's how a lot of people can get burned pretty badly. I was a casualty of that too. When I was 27, 28, I was selling the hell out of a lot of real estate, thinking the market was just never going to stop, man. So we're opposite ends of the spectrum with regard to that. If I had your knowledge at that point, I might be in a different chair today, or at least a little farther ahead. Let me ask you this, because success doesn't come without setbacks, and you're a couple years into this. Have you had any big challenges other than, the market obviously has been nothing shy of unique. We were just talking a few minutes ago about what just happened with that property and some damage there. Have you had any big major setbacks or anything like that you've had to really put your head down and push through?
Yeah, not anything too massive. There's obviously the occasional bout of getting ripped off by a contractor, which early on that was really painful. But I would say, that would be a good example of like that. The very first house that I bought with the intention of it being a rental property, I didn't know what I was doing. I hired a home inspector that was just the cheapest flat rate guy I could find, and he did a terrible job. He didn't find like anything. He didn't find the termites in the crawl space, the mold in the kitchen cabinets, any of that stuff. So that ended up not being a good deal. I had to, since I bought it with a 30-year investment property mortgage from a local credit union, and it was only a $60,000 purchase, my mortgage was $352 a month. And I ended up having to hold on to that property for like 2 years vacant and make those monthly mortgage payments until eventually the market had gone up enough and I had enough saved at that point to be able to finally do the repairs needed. And then at that point, I just went ahead and sold it. And at the end of the day, I probably came close to around break even, but that's only because the market went up about $30,000 in value in those 2 years. Had the market not gone up, I definitely would have lost money on it. So I'll say that was a big learning curve. But one takeaway that I think that leaves new folks with is I knew going into that if the worst case scenarios happened, I could cover that $350 a month payment without sending my family into bankruptcy. And I think that's when, especially your first few deals when you're starting out, especially if there's no safety net, you've got to be really careful with the first deals. I would recommend getting somebody that's way more experienced than you to go with you to the property, walk through it. I didn't know anybody that was doing it yet, and I wasn't smart enough to think to find somebody. So that was a big one. Other than contractor issues or like houses getting flooded from pipes busting in a vacant house, causing damage, or like we were talking about just happened today, the house getting broken into and stuff stolen and all that stuff. That's just par for the course, by
Yeah.
now. But I would say one of the bigger challenges that I had dealt with for a little over a year or so that I'll say around the beginning of this year is when I finally had more breathing room was just managing liquidity while trying to grow. Because yes, I've been making great money flipping houses, but I've also pretty immediately been turning around and shelling it all right back out as down payments on commercial multifamily. And there's one property in particular that was a 16 unit in Havelock that I bought that needed a basically full gut down to the studs, no floor joists, just exterior framing and roof trusses. That was it. So basically new construction. And that one, even though I used private money to fund the purchase and some of the rehab, I still had to shell out a ton of money for that rehab out of my own pocket for about 13 months that it took to get that project finished. So trying to manage all the flips and the liquidity needed to handle those rehabs and deal with that rehab. And then all the while 2024 hits and we have like the worst sellers market since 1995 out of nowhere. And then stuff is not selling or not selling in a reasonable amount of time. So there's less liquidity coming back to me. There were a few times that I've had to go to one of my private lenders and say, "Hey, would you be okay loaning me 50,000 or 75,000 for a couple of months until these two properties sell, and I'll pay you a little bit more interest since the loan will be unsecured." And I've just kind of had to do that on occasion, but I think in the last few months I've handled most of that and become pretty liquid again, and that'll only continue to get better throughout this year. I just have to try to teach myself to maintain some control to not immediately go and spend all that on another down payment. I need to learn to keep a healthy amount of reserves.
Yeah, that's really important, man. And you're wise to be mindful of that because it is, I can speak from experience when you get, a settlement statement and then you've got $60,000, $70,000 coming to you, at the end of a deal, you want to redeploy that, but you also have to be responsible because the percentage of that doesn't belong to you. It belongs to Uncle Sam. Percentage of that belongs to your investors. Percentage of that belongs back to the original basis of the property. So it's tough to, it takes discipline to look at that number and then kind of distill it down to what actually belongs in your pocket. And then if this is a business, you have to treat it accordingly. So it needs to be redeployed so that it continue to work for you. But it's always it's a struggle and it's a separate strategy aside from actually doing the physical work of finding houses, repairing them and selling them is the financial side of it and having access to that capital and liquidity and maintaining that with those relationships. That's a big piece of it, right?
Absolutely.
So do you have a mentor now or someone, it sounds like you did a lot of this by trial and error and just by like learning through bigger pockets and then meeting people in the field. Is there someone or are you part of a coaching program or where do you get inspiration and insight for your current venture now?
Yeah. I did right at a year ago join the Collective Genius Mastermind, and that's a mastermind where they've got, certain requirements. You have to be an investor that does a certain amount of volume to be able to get into the various tiers that they have, and it's not cheap either. So the people that you meet there are in there for a reason, like you are. They're serious players. They're not tire kickers, and they're from all over the country and different types of markets and different types of asset classes. And so there's always a ton to learn from those folks, whether I'm just keeping an eye on what they're doing or seeing questions other people are asking or asking questions myself, and then going to their in-person events as well to meet people in person and network. Those relationships are just invaluable. And at some point when you're in a small market, and I hate to say it this way because it sounds like a little arrogant to me, but like when you become one of the bigger fish in your market, in your proverbial pond, if you will, you need to find a bigger pond. You need to get into somewhere else where you're the little fish, or close to it, because that's how you're going to grow. You're not going to continue to grow being surrounded by 100 other people that are just constantly wanting something from you, wanting you to help them grow, which I don't mind doing it all, and we all should give back some, but you should also strive to have relationships with those that can help you become better as well. But I would say prior to being in CG, I didn't really have any mentor or any programs or courses. I never paid for a course. I never hired a mentor, but I was adamant on networking locally. And I would go to every local meetup that I could and meet all of the players. And in the time doing that, I met a handful of folks that were a little bit older, a little bit more experienced, that had been doing this for 5, 10, 20, 30 years. And when I have needed something, those are the guys that I would often go and ask. And I was real careful, like, because I knew that their time was really valuable. So I was real careful as to not ask them a ton of questions super often and try to take up much of their time. So I would just kind of split it out. If I had, three different questions that I wanted a experienced person's opinion on, all within like the same week, I would probably ask those three questions to three different people instead of the same person, just for the sake of respecting their time and saving that personal capital. And I think all those guys respected that. They respected that I wasn't wasting their time. I was asking legitimate questions that couldn't be figured out by a simple Google search. And I was most importantly taking action and actually implementing the advice that they were giving
That's the
me.
biggest thing in my experience when folks come to me and they're asking for insight or questions. Like you said, I love to help out. I love to share some of my experiences, but if it's something you can find on Google or ChatGPT, you should start there. And secondly, if I do give you advice, I want to see that you're taking it. And then if you are, I'll continue to pour into you and teach you. And if not, though, then it's just like a swinging door. And I get a lot of like ROI helping and other people succeed. That's something that really kind of fills my cup. So I really enjoy it, and I think a lot of folks do, even if they're not out there kind of advertising that service. Everyone likes to be, if you're good at something, I think you have responsibility to share your expertise as well to a certain point. But yeah, a lot of folks call and say, can I pick your brain? Can I pick your brain? At a certain point, you got to say, yeah, you pick your payment method as well, because I have a life to live. I have to make a living here as well. So it's that fine line, but you're wise to value that capital, that relationship capital, and that's the way. That's a way
Yeah.
to build a group and a tribe around you just by virtue of like organic relationships. So, are you involved with any current like? I think I see you're like involved with one of the coastal real estate connection meetups or something like that. Is there one that you affiliate with or you visit often still?
Yeah, I'm on the board of the Coastal Carolina Real Estate Investors Association that meets in Wilmington once a month. And those are usually good events. There's usually 70, 80, 90 people that show up, great networking opportunities. And on that note too, being able to be on the board and be occasionally hosting a meetup or co-hosting a meetup with one of the other board members or speaking at one of the meetups. Anytime you get the opportunity to get in front of people like that and show your expertise, It just builds so much more credibility and authority, and it attracts more success. It attracts more wholesalers wanting to bring you deals. It attracts more private lenders wanting to fund your deals. And I'll say one more note to add on the mentorship side of things is one kind of tool that I've used to help protect my time over the years, because I post a lot about my deals that I'm doing on Facebook and Instagram every day, and I don't usually mention the numbers on them, but I just will keep people updated on what I'm doing just to help maintain that credibility and attract more success. But because of that, I have dozens of people reaching out to me saying, "Hey, can you mentor me? Can you show me what you do? Can you teach me your ways?" Like all these things. And so one method that I have started using probably for about 2 years now that really helps protect my time is I tell anybody that asks me, I say, okay, here's a link to a YouTube video on a presentation that I gave on flipping houses. It's a really good starting point for you, high level view of stuff, introduce you to a lot of the basic terms, and then you can go on your own and learn more about a lot of those terms. So go watch this video, and then here's a list of 3 of what I feel are the best books for you to begin with. And go read those 3 books after you've watched the video and make note of your questions that you come up with. And when you're done with all of that, come to me with your questions. We'll sit down for an hour or two and walk through them all and go from there. And Christian, I kid you not, after 2 years of doing that, not one single person has even done that little bit. It blows my mind because there are people that have offered to pay me thousands a month to mentor them that I have turned down because I don't like the idea of somebody else feeling obligated to my time or obligated to how quickly I respond to them.
Yeah.
I just don't like that idea, which is why I've declined those offers. But for somebody that's family or a close friend or something that's wanting some guidance, I don't mind helping them as I'm able to, without, charging them for it. But it's just so sad when you give people an opportunity and you just have a few simple requirements for them to do, and then you'll be happy to help them, and nobody's willing to do the work. They just want the result without the work, and it's disappointing. I've had almost everybody watches the video, almost nobody reads the first book. I think I've had, from at least from what I have been told, I've had 2 people that have actually read the first book and then maybe started the second book but never finished it. And it hurts my soul because I'm like, man, you guys don't know how much I could help you change your life and your family's trajectory and your legacy with what I know, and how I could help you get into it if you would just put in the work that's needed.
It's crazy, man.
It's
It is,
disheartening.
but that's what separates the producers from the average bear. I mean, there's a guy I follow. I like him a lot. He always says, "I can help you, but you got to swim towards me." And that's just exactly it. I mean, you got to do the work too. People see the results of what you do, but they don't see how hard you work every day to generate those results. And so it's a shame, but at some point, someone will take you up on it. And then I found that people, if they don't pay for something, they don't value it. So it's almost like, and I see your position. You don't want to be beholden to someone else because you're still doing you're in the prime right now of your income generating time, with flipping and all this stuff. So to sit back and start coaching other people, you could make, you could make more doing what you're doing. But if people don't pay for it, then it's almost like they don't value it. And so if they know they could just call you at any point in time, then at a certain point you have to kind of make it hurt a little bit just to get people to buy in. But it is a unique circumstance when people ask you for so much that you give them exactly what they want and then they just evaporate.
Yeah, and I think that's a good reason why people should also not be afraid to share what they know, because there's so many people that have a scarcity mindset and they're just ultra competitive and don't want to share anything. But at the end of the day, if you're the most abundant minded person and you're sharing everything with everybody, 99% or more of the people that you share that with are never going to take any action and do anything with that information anyway. So there's no reason to have that mindset and be concerned about creating competition or taking food off of your table because, well, first of all, there's enough deals to go around, but secondly, most everybody are not going to do the work.
That's the biggest thing. That's the differentiator. You're completely right. It's, competition and stuff like that. That happens at the bottom anyway. Up at the top is where it's just collaboration, showing what you're doing, sharing. Folks can pay attention and apply it if they're smart and have the wherewithal. And if they don't, no big deal. But at least you're doing your part. You're sharing your big wins. And if you're in an abundance state of mind, and that frequency and that vibration, it attracts more. So I think it is important to share what you're doing. And it's not necessarily braggadocious. It's just that's how you got to put it out there, and then you will return more. So I think you and I are aligned in that mindset for sure. I want to ask you right now, as far as strategy, and you mentioned a couple books that you recommend. Who are you listening to, or what are you reading? How do you stay kind of up to date with market trends and stuff like that?
Yeah, so I will admit that I, in the last year and a half, 2 years or so, have not been nearly as updated education wise as I was before because I've just been so head down in the business. I would say right now, the podcasts that I listen to the most would be Steve Trang's Disruptors podcast and probably Ryan Pineda's podcast as well.
He's got a great one.
Some decent variety.
Yeah. He's always kind of well, yeah, because he's big in your space too, right? Is the Collective Genius, is that his community?
No, I think his is called Seven Figure Flipper.
Okay, gotcha. But yeah, he definitely has a lot of good content. He preaches. He's got like a little religious element to it from time to time, and then entrepreneurial, but then very much into the flipping business as well. And so, yeah, what do you think about Bigger Pockets? I know since David Green left, that whole thing. For me, it seems I used to pay attention to it so closely, and now it's just not the same. I don't know if you have an opinion about that. I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not the same. So ever since Brandon left the podcast, I had not listened to it much, and unless I saw a particular guest that piqued my interest or something like that, then I might click it and watch it. But sadly, I don't that much anymore. Luckily, I did have the opportunity to be a guest on the Bigger Pockets podcast back in December of 23, and that's when the episode aired. And that interview was with David Green and Rob Abasolo. But truthfully, I hadn't been watching it much, keeping up with it ever since Brandon left. And I've wondered the same thing. I've wondered if is Bigger Pockets falling off, or is it just me because I don't really listen to it that much anymore?
Yeah, I think it plays a role during the season of your career, and maybe it'll come back. And I think it's going through like a little renaissance right now, hopefully for the better. But yeah, I remember listening to that episode that you were on. I was like, dude, this guy's talking about, it sounds like our market. And then I kind of connected the dots. And I think at one point then you said, you mentioned like Wilmington or Rocky Point or Burgar or something. I was like, I got to find this fucking guy. He's in my backyard. And then I appreciated when we got a chance to get together and have coffee a while back. It's cool. That's definitely a cool feather in your cap, because that is the biggest resource still, like it or not, for real estate education. I think it's out there in the most digestible format, and it's changed a lot of people's lives by just offering so much information. And then, like you said, 9 out of 10 people, it goes in one ear and out the other, but the one that does listen ends up in the position that you're in. Tell me about where you see right now kind of the biggest opportunities in today's market. I know interest rates are volatile, administration is all over the place, but where should like entrepreneurs and investors be focusing right now, in your opinion?
Oh man, that's tough because I've got my head so down on what I'm doing that I'm not looking too much at the rest. I mean, I do think there may be some serious opportunity on the horizon in the commercial multifamily space due to all of the 5-year loans that were taken 3 and 4 and 5 years ago that are now coming due at triple the interest rate. I think there's a lot of losses being taken behind the scenes and behind closed doors deals happening. So I think there could be some motivation from sellers to, accept lower prices in that space. But for me, I'm continuing flipping single family and putting that money in, decent deals for commercial multifamily. And last year I bought an RV park that we're converting into a tiny home community. And so we're still working on the infrastructure improvements there. That's pretty exciting. I'm excited to get that one stabilized, and that thing's just gonna just print money. It's gonna be insane what that property does. So yeah, I don't really know what specific opportunities may
Well, and
arise.
you mentioned before, so what you're focused on right now is single family flipping, still doing mainly the manufactured homes, or do you do stick built as well?
I do, yeah. It's roughly half and
Okay,
half.
good. Well, I think there's still opportunity for that. I think, you and I talked offline the other day in that price point that you really operate in. You have definitely a knack for finding great off-market opportunities and just really just bringing those to market in any condition is gonna net you a result. I think I see a lot of opportunity in the ability to find off market properties because by the time they hit the market, most of the time they've been adjusted to market prices, and there's so much competition for them in that price point of like 253 and under in our marketplace.
Yeah.
Those who he who has the gold makes the rules, right? So if you've got the listing, or you've got the contract, or you've got the off market property, then you'll always remain kind of in pole position.
Yeah, that should have been the answer that came to mind when you asked me that question, because recently we've been having a lot of success with the wholesale method, and for anybody listening that isn't familiar with that, it's just a combination of the words wholesale and retail, and all it means is you actually close on the property just like you're going to flip it, except you don't do the rehab. You either do nothing to it, or maybe you just junk out the trash from it, and then you list it for sale as is. I mean, I have one that we just sold yesterday out in Burgal on 5.5 acres. We bought for 250. All we did was junk it out. The inspection report showed $7,500 worth of foundation issues that we had to take care of, but that's it. We did nothing else. We sold it for 414 as is. And I have so many examples of that over recent months of properties and not all of them are financeable. Some of them are even like really messed up, bad condition trailers on land that people are willing to pay, because I think just with what prices have done in recent years, people, whether it's cash buyers looking for some sort of investment or first time home buyers looking for something that's financeable, regardless of who they are, there are so many people on the open market that are desperate right now for even the slightest bit of a discount on anything, that they're willing to take something that is really ugly and outdated if it means that they get, $30,000 off of the price. And so a lot of these, I'm making just as much or sometimes more money, more profit by selling them as is than if I would have put 40 or 50,000 into rehabbing them and then selling them that
Yeah,
way.
it's like you can do no work or a lot of work, and you'll make more money if you do the work, but pound for pound, you can basically make the same pro rata by doing nothing just by housing the opportunity. So that's really where the value is. And that goes across any market and any asset class, truly. But you got to have the ability to source it, and then mainly the ability and the expertise to recognize it. So kudos to you, man, for being able to do that. I think that's awesome. I think you got a lot of opportunity in front of you. You're doing a great job, man. I want to have you tell our audience where they can find you if they want to reach out to you and support you. I'll ask you this: how can we support you? Are you looking for something specific that maybe if someone's listening, they've got a property in a certain market that you play in, or access to cash or capital? How can we help you?
Yeah, I appreciate it. We're always buying specifically in the Wilmington, North Carolina market. I'm willing to consider outside of that area for larger 15 plus unit properties, and always looking for more private lenders to fund all of our flips.
Okay, awesome. And when you do that,
Yep.
is there certain tiers you're looking for? 50,000, 100,000, 250, or kind of just open to having discussions with anybody in the investment side?
Yeah, I would say typically I just have one lender fund per deal, and my smaller loan amounts might be 60 to 70,000, and I've got some opportunities as high as 600,000, but the average is probably around 130, 150-ish.
Okay.
So anybody, I would say if it's less than 50, I probably wouldn't be able to find a good spot for it in a quick amount of time.
Okay.
But I have, more than 2 million out of private money right now over several private lenders and another 2 or 2.5 million in hard money out as well. And I've never missed a payment. And their loans are collateralized with a deed of trust, a promissory note, a personal guarantee. So, and I don't buy anything for the most part, with few exceptions. I don't buy properties where my total purchase price plus rehab costs will exceed 70% of the after repair value. So the loans are very well collateralized at low LTVs.
Yeah, and that's important that you raise that point, because those are questions that you should be asking if you're in the money space. If you are loaning, that's a really important piece of the puzzle: is what kind of assets are they acquiring, how are they secured, how are they collateralized, and at what loan to value, so you can see how much exposure there is. So that's awesome, dude. Well, how can folks reach out to you if they want to? Where can they find you?
Yeah, thank you. You can find me, just my name, on Instagram, Facebook. You can find other podcasts that I've been guests on. If you search my name on YouTube, there's not many Jason Velies in the country, so not hard to find. And if you were interested in checking out or reaching out about being a potential private lender, you can go to jvwithjv.com and it'll take you to the investor tab of my house flipping business website, and you can fill out a form to send your information, and then I'll reach out and we can hop on a call.
That sounds great, dude. I love it, man. Well, listen, I can't thank you enough for joining us today. You brought a lot of awesome information, and you got a great story, man. So I think the best is yet to come, and hopefully I'll see you at one of these meetups soon. I'm gonna get it on my calendar, and we'll have a drink together.
Yeah, man. Looking forward to it. Thanks again
Yes,
for
sir.
having me.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that's Mr. Jason Velie. This is Christian Cardamone signing off with the Build Better Blueprint. We'll see you next time.
That's it, folks. That's our show. Thanks as always for listening. If you enjoyed today's discussion, please leave us a 5-star rating and subscribe to our channel so you are up to date with the latest episodes. Feel free to share with your friends and keep up the great work. You are on the right path. See you at the top.